Hello everyone, welcome to this video lecture. In this video, I'll be talking about cyberfeminism. So this is actually a study conducted by Chiara Hall from Rutgers University in Camden. Now the reason why I would like to talk about this one is for us to understand how gender representation happens in computer-mediated discourses. So it's very important that before we understand gendered analysis of computer-mediated discourses, we know the background facts of how cyberfeminism existed, and we know more about how it is to analyze computer-mediated discourses through the lens of gender. So let me begin by situationing gender in the virtual community. So let us contemplate as to how gender is situated in a virtual community or in various virtual commons. How is gender represented through the various uses of computer-mediated discourses? Can we say that there is really equality in virtual commons in terms of observation of gender differences? Okay, so these questions will guide us in really understanding how cyberfeminism works and the different ideologies, okay, political ideologies that could be representative of how gender is projected on various virtual platforms. So, again, it's very important that we have a clear mind on how gender is situated in the virtual community. Okay? It's also important that we have good foundations, knowledge in terms of how gender is represented in various online platforms through the use of computer-mediated discourses. Now, as an introduction, in her now classic Manifesto for Cyborgs, Donna Haraway brings together a number of disparate philosophical responses to the increasing sophistication of technology and identifies it as new feminism. Now, we know that with the sophisticated or the complicated technology available nowadays, the representation of gender also changes. That only follows to say that if the technology that we are using is also advanced, the way these various genders in these virtual commons use language could also vary. Arguing that the blurring of the boundaries between human and machine will eventually make the categories of female and male obsolete, she contemplates the utopian dream for the hope of a monstrous world without gender. Now, as mentioned in my previous discussions, computer-mediated discourse is neither written or spoken, not only because of its algorithm or its features, but also because there is no gender really when we talk about computer-mediated discourses. We cannot identify or we cannot point out straightforward if the person making or if the discourse maker is or has this gender, okay? Because computer mediated discourse is something that is vague, okay, in terms of how we should understand it. Also because of the vagueness in computer mediated discourses, gender is not clearly represented or gender is not clearly projected through the word choice. Although there are a number of studies already that would point out to, let's say, this specific gender uses this kind of language or this specific gender has this kind of linguistic features, we really cannot conclude yet if this one is really a possession or a character of this specific gender in terms of the linguistic features. Her futuristic vision, inspired in part by the gender-free utopias of feminist science fiction, is an extension of the postmodern interest in challenging essentialist and dualistic understandings of gender. Now, what's emphasized here is that Donna Haraway, would like to point out that there is no need for this essentialist perspective, meaning what is your true essence as a man or a woman? Or there should be no dualistic understanding alone. Let's say it's only male or female. Okay? Because for Donna, it is very important that there should be equality in terms of gender representation on various online platforms And so there is the so-called feminism being advocated. Now, we have this concept called liberal cyberfeminism. The magazine Future Sex is one of the more extreme contributions to liberal cyberfeminism. Now, if you search online, this magazine is actually advocating liberal cyberfeminism. And if you see, let's say, the covers, okay, of these magazines, you would immediately identify what makes it something that contributes a lot to liberal cyberfeminism as an ideology. It embraces the tenets of Haraway's cyborg feminism to advance sexual liberation theory, which is a political ideology which developed out of the feminist debates on sexuality in the 1980s and which continues to influence today's feminist politics, okay? Primarily focusing on how females, okay, how women should be viewed in the society. Proponents of the theory argue that women's sexual liberation is necessary before gender equality can occur, and oppose the claim of radical feminists that pornography is inherently harmful to women and should be made illegal. Okay? Because this feminism or this political ideology believes that women should be sexually liberated. Okay? There should be no imposition of limitations for women, primarily because women have the rights to do anything they want to do. Okay? May it be physically or virtually. And so, this liberal cyberfeminism points out as well that there's nothing wrong with pornography. Okay? It's not inherently harmful and it's not illegal. Okay? It's not illegal. The unyielding antagonism between these two views is said to have divided American feminism into the misleadingly labeled camps of anti-pornography radicalism and pro-sex liberalism, a split represented in the 1990s by anti-porn activist Catherine McKinnon on one side and pro-porn activist Susie Bright on the other. See, there is this division now of feminism. We cannot really say that if you are a feminist, automatically a feminist would view women as, let's say, women's body as sacred, okay, or holy. It should not be subjected to being sexualized, okay, or being used as a sexual material, for example, in the context of pornography. Because in the American context, there was already this division, okay, there was already this divide happening. And that is basically between the anti-pornography movement, okay, or also called as the radicalism movement, and then you also have the liberalism, which is basically pro-sex. And pro-sex liberalism advocates that women should be sexually liberated, meaning they should be given the opportunities to do whatever they want, however they want to be represented online. And this also interjects that there's nothing wrong with pornography, because when women are involved in pornography, then basically they are just being sexually liberated. Okay, that's the belief of pro-sex liberalism. Now, a number of women self-identifying with the latter branch of feminists who place primary importance on freedom of expression, have now embraced cyberculture as a new frontier of sexual activism and rebellion. I don't know if you have heard or seen the news about women who are actually engaged in sexual activism. For example, some women, feminists, would say that if male could go out to public places naked, so they believe that women should also do the same, or women could also do the same. Okay, that's part of feminism. Okay, that's part of liberal cyberfeminism. Now, the thing that is being emphasized though is how women practice freedom of expression online or virtually. Okay, and how they should not be judged based on how they practice their being females or women. Okay. The notion that futuristic technology will free its users from the limitations of the physical world, thereby allowing for a more democratic society, has been bandied for decades, long before Haraway wrote her Cyborg Manifesto. When the growing sophistication of computer technology in the early 1980s added new fuel to the claim, fiction writers began to theorize on the instability of the physical body. Okay? We cannot really say that whatever is represented with the physical body, same is true with whatever is represented in the virtual world. Subsequently, It's on the appropriateness of physical categorization. For example, if you appear like this, automatically you are male. Or if you appear like this, automatically you are a female. In a virtual world and in the belief of liberal cyberfeminism, it's totally the same. You can still be mentally and emotionally female even if your body virtually is male. Okay? So that is how feminism or cyberfeminism should be understood in this context. Now, central to the science fiction of those associated with the 1980s cyberpunk movement, for instance, is what Bruce Sterling calls the theme of body invasion. So you cannot really say that if, for example, as shown in the image, even if you look as masculine as this cyborg here, okay, or this image here may still project or portray a feminine side. Okay, because that is the context in virtual world. Cyberpunk writers imagine an electronically mediated world where mental is no longer limited by the physical, so as with the emotional aspect. When Sterling argues that the technological revolution reshaping our society is based not on hierarchy but on decentralization, not on rigidity but on fluidity, he imagines actually a utopia that will free its inhabitants from the rigid nature of physically based hierarchies. If we are to put it in the context of the physical world, then we could say that if you look like this, or if you have genitals like this, then you are a male or a female. But in the virtual world, it's totally different because there are no physically based hierarchies. You can look as masculine as you are, even if emotionally or mentally you are female. Same goes with the use of various computer-mediated discourses. When you use features like this, automatically you should not be labeled as a male or a female just because you use, for example, linguistic features like this, or just because these are the dominant linguistic features in your discourses. Okay? I hope I'm making myself clear in this example. Now, people should present an interaction that will liberate participants from the binary oppositions of female, male, and homosexual or heterosexual. Now, if I were to set aside faith or religion here, I would have to give my opinion by saying that there should be an equal representation of gender by slashing away binary oppositions, by just saying that it should only be male or female or homosexual or heterosexual. That also follows to say that, for example, if you are practicing whatever gender preference you have or whatever sexual orientation you have, then it should be okay. For example, if you look at the picture here, you may say that this one is actually a male. This is masculine. But you might not know that in the characterization of this cyborg in the virtual world, this could also be a female or a homosexual. You might not know that. Okay? According to Croker and Croker in 1993, neither male physically nor female genetically, nor their simple reversal, but something else, a virtual sex floating in an elliptical orbit around the planet of gender that it has left behind, finally free of the powerful gravitational pull of the binary signs of the male-female antinomies in the crowded earth scene of gender. A virtual sex that is not limited to gays and lesbians, but which is open to members of the heterosexual club as well, and one that privileges sexual reconciliation rather than sexual victimization. Now, what is happening in the present or in the or contemporary virtual world is the fact that there is this proliferation of sexual victimization, saying that females or women are not represented well in computer-mediated discourses or in various virtual commons or platforms. Or there is still discrimination of LGBT rights on various virtual platforms. Now, instead of focusing on sexual victimization, why not focus more on sexual reconciliation, understanding that binary oppositions are non-essential, and instead looking at how genders are appropriately represented in various contexts. Okay? Now, as a conclusion to my discussion on liberal cyberfeminism, I think it would be best if we among ourselves contemplate about these questions. First one is, in the modern virtual community, how are women portrayed? Do you think women are portrayed well, or are there still biases? Second, do you believe that there is gender equality in today's computer-mediated discourses? Do you think that every gender is represented well in various virtual commons? And lastly, how is male dominance observed or created in a virtual community? Is it apparent not only in terms of the use of language, but also in terms of, let's say, various ideologies or various, let's say, the authority, okay? Authority injected in the use of language, okay? So again, these are the questions that can guide you in understanding more or in knowing more about liberal cyberfeminism. Now, if you have any questions regarding this topic, you are free to post them on the open forum. Thank you very much for listening to this video discussion.